Hello and welcome into the KE Report. I'm your host, Shad Markwitz, and today we're getting an update and really a reintroduction to America's Gold and Silver. America's Gold and Silver is traded on the TSX under the ticker USA and on the NYSE American under the ticker USAS. And I'm joined today with the CEO and chairman of America's Gold and Silver, Paul Huet. And Paul, it's great to get you on the show, really for the first time here at the KE Report. We have talked about America's Gold and Silver in the past on our show, but it's been a long time. So wanted to give people a nice update and really bring them up to speed on all the initiatives you have going on. Just for people listening in, America's Gold and Silver is a producing company. They have the Galena Complex in Idaho, and they also have the Cosalá operations in Sinaloa, Mexico, both of them producing mainly silver, but they have other base metal credits in there and a little other precious metals in the mix. And what really caught my attention about the company was a news release that happened on October the 9th. And really, this dealt with a transaction where, Paul, you were coming in as the CEO, but it also gave the company the other 40%. So you now have 100% consolidation of the Galena complex. Let's maybe kick it off there, Paul, just with where you came into the company and what the bigger picture vision is for the company.
Yeah, thanks, Shad. It's great to be here today. I don't often run into people with as much energy and passion as me, so keep up the good work. I love the energy. So back in October, as you were talking about, we were just on the heels of selling Karora. Those of you who know our Karora story and had the advantage of participating in it know that Karora was sold to Westgold, and Eric Sprott had approached me about this 40% asset that he owned, which was the Galena mine. So I was actually helping Eric as a technical advisor before we did the deal. But one thing that was very important to getting this deal done was us, America's Gold and Silver, and our shareholders owning 100% of Galena. So convincing Eric to bring in his 40% back into the mixture and into the fold was quite critical to the success we'd have to take advantage of personally what I believe in is a really good silver bull market that's in front of us. So getting that 40% was instrumental and critical even to myself joining. On the heels of selling Karora, we had, myself and the team, a lot of different opportunities. This was one of about five. This one we liked the most because we believed it's a real unique turnaround story, similar to Klondex and Karora were. It lends itself to our greatest skill sets, which is operational. And we were the same team sticking together, which was very important to all of us. So, yeah, Eric's 40%. And then alongside that, we raised the $50 million of equity the day that that was announced, we also announced a $50 million equity financing Canadian, which was oversubscribed.
Well, and this Galena mine has a rich history, but you've got a nice slide in your deck that showcases that really almost 2 decades ago, this mine was producing quite a bit more silver and base metals. And one of the initiatives you have in place is to look at growing the production. One of the things we like to cover on the show is growth-oriented producers, producers that have growth on their map. You've done a lot of work to improve the team, improve the equipment at site, improve the hoist. So maybe speak to some of the initiatives to continue to grow production at Galena.
Yes, this is a really interesting story, as you point out, because we're going to return Galena back to its glory. Galena did produce 5.6 million ounces of silver back in 2002. So we're going to restore it back to something it has done in the past. And we're quite excited to do that. And like any other story, it requires obviously a very strong team. And some of the things that we have done right out of the gate, well, we've got a very new board, a stronger board. We've got a new executive team, and we put in a new mining team at Galena. And we'll talk more about Galena out of the gate and then maybe Coastal afterward, Chad. But Galena needed a really strong, narrow vein operations team. That's led by Evan Peltier, who I've known for over 30 years. He was running the Macassa complex up in Northern Ontario for Kirkland Lake Gold. So him and I have worked together for years. We've known each other for a long time. He's the perfect guy for this job. And I personally get to go there every week. And given my experiences in narrow vein, and Mike Doolin, our chief operating experiences in metallurgy, restoring it to its glory days is something we absolutely can do. And it's not complicated. It's about doing about five things. And one is the team, it's already done. Two, you mentioned bringing in a new fleet of equipment. The new fleet is ordered. About 70% of it is received. We're actually in the process of getting it to work underground. Three, it's about adopting a new mining method and implementing long hole. Now, we're not doing anything long hole at the moment today, but our neighbors next door at Lucky Friday are doing an amazing job. They're doing a great job drilling and blasting 10,000 ton stopes, all long hole. So we've got a mine on a very similar geologic formation in the same silver district that we're in, doing 100% long hole, which is safer, cheaper, more efficient, and us who's doing everything with handheld drills. So converting our mine to a long hole mining method, like we did at Klondike, like we did at Karora, is instrumental for us to get the right amount of feed to those mills. We have two mills. We're only using one of them 2 days a week. Now, the other steps that we need to do is we need to do some upgrades to our shaft. That's going to be very key, and that's happening in the fourth quarter, and then putting in a batch plant. So to recap it, you talk about a new team, new equipment, new mining method, a batch plant to do long hole, and some waste development. We need some waste development as well. So once we do all those things and we improve that speed in the shaft, we can see ourselves to well over 1,000 tons of ore a day. And just for everybody listening, when Galena did 5.6 million ounces of silver that year, it was running at about just shy of 600 tons of ore a day.
Well, and I would say another initiative you're involved with that still would lead to future growth is your ongoing infill drilling program. So you're trying to get those higher confidence ounces in the mine plan, but you've also put out some interesting exploration results just earlier this year in April. You put out some high grade, just reminding people of the prospectivity for growing ounces here. Maybe speak to the exploration efforts.
Yeah, so Shad, that's a really good question. And given where we were in America's Gold and Silver's life, because there was so much attention and efforts put into the Relief Canyon mine, not a lot of attention was given to Galena or Cosalá. So both of those assets were neglected. But that also creates the opportunity for us because there's been no exploration drilling at either site for a decade. No exploration at Cosalá, no exploration at Galena. There's been infill drilling. I am not saying there was no drilling. I'm saying there was no exploration. So we immediately started doing some drilling, and you can see that first vein that we announced. It's the 34 vein. We've already wrapped a resource around it already. We're talking 3.4 meters wide of 980 gram material. That's double the grade that we're currently mining, and we're already like 400 gram. Try to find a mine in the world that's running 400 grams silver, and that's I know we haven't talked about some of the byproduct credits, which are very, very important. And they're going to be even more important on a go forward basis given the new agreements that we've signed. So, from my perspective, exploration is wide open here. This is like the best of the best. We're never going to find anything as unique in time with so much exploration upside because there hasn't been any of it done. And we're inheriting a mine that has a resource that already has 10 plus years. You got over 140 to 160 million ounces of silver in the ground already identified from the existing infrastructure. So, tremendous footprint in the greatest jurisdiction you're going to find on the planet. And we've already started the drills, and you see the early on results right out of the gate.
Well, it's going to be exciting to watch more results come in from the drilling, but let's get into some of those co-credits because another initiative that you've announced is really focused on antimony alongside the silver and the copper recoveries. You've just done some metallurgical work that you released to the market mid-May and on the 15th. But talk to us about antimony. It seems like, Paul, everybody is finding antimony on their projects now that it's gone up so much in price, but you have a legit way of producing here, and you also have the history of having antimony production out of this area.
Yeah, so look, I will say this. When we did our due diligence, antimony was not on our radar. This is kind of the icing on the cake that we weren't even completely aware of. We were looking at it from a distance. We were very focused at the silver, the copper, and the gold, but antimony has been a complete turnaround story, even for myself. When we look at the amount of antimony we have produced over the last 2 decades, Galena Mine has produced about 18 million pounds of antimony, and we have this because we have the assays from the tail end. So we know exactly, right to the pound, how many pounds of antimony we produce. But when you look at the revenue, it's a very different story. We've produced 18 million pounds of antimony. We've been paid nothing for it. If you use today's prices, and I know that this is over time, but at today's prices of antimony, we're talking about $60,000 a pound. You look at the math on that, that's over $500 million of revenue that we got nothing for. So, from our perspective, with a new team looking at things very differently and partnering with Teck, Cominco, and Ocean Partners, we're looking at taking advantage of this. In fact, one of the important things of this new offtake agreement that we have is that we're going to start getting paid for antimony. We were being punished, and it was a penalty in the past. That won't be the case going forward. It's a tremendous game changer for us. And at the moment, Galena does not have an antimony resource, not because it doesn't exist. And I want to be really clear on this. It does exist. We've never assayed for it. So we're doing a lot of work at the moment with our team. Our geology team have sent about 3 to 4,000 samples, old samples, back into labs, into Reno, so that we can construct this resource of antimony, similar to how we were able to figure out exactly. Mike Doolin, our chief operating officer, was able to determine how much antimony production we actually had. Now, that's one element, Shad, of a couple elements. So we're a silver producer, first and foremost, but we have silver lead veins at Galena, but we also have silver copper veins at Galena. So our copper hasn't been paid either. So we've got antimony that hasn't been paid. We've got copper that hasn't been paid. And we even have gold. Like some of the concentrates I've seen, the results is 7 gram gold. And I'm like, holy cow, these are phenomenal gold grades. Why are we not getting paid for that? All those things are changing for us in the future and for our shareholders. And we're quite excited about this new partnership that we've developed with Ocean Partners and Teck Cominco, who did participate in that last round of equity. And I think we'll get into it a little later, but at a premium. So there are a lot of critical elements inside of our story that haven't made it to the bottom line yet, but that will find their way here in the near future.
Well, I think that's going to be exciting. In addition to growing the resources with the drill bit, having the better team in there, having the better equipment in there, working on the hoist shaft later this year, you have the ability to get paid on all these other co-credits from the copper and the antimony and the gold. I don't think anybody's going to be upset to hear that, Paul. So that's a nice positive growth element for the company. And then you brought up that transaction. I guess let's just go there now before we move down to Mexico. Let's talk about the news you put out to the marketplace on June the 3rd. And this is this $100 million debt financing, but it also secured a multi-metal offtake agreement. And this is the deal with Ocean Partners that you brought up, and you're processing this at the Teck Resources trail operations in British Columbia. So talk to us about this offtake agreement. Talk to us about this restructuring of the company.
Yeah, so look, this was the game changer for us and our shareholders. Look, working with the likes of Teck, Cominco, and Ocean Partners, these guys are the best at what they do. They're both great partners to have, great companies to work alongside. We're very, very pleased. Things couldn't have gotten better for us and our shareholders and for them as well. Both parties, it's nice to walk away from the table when all the companies at the table leave going, hey, I feel like this is going to be a great relationship going forward. And we all benefit instead of one group feeling really sour. This is going to be a good, long relationship. And one of the things we had to do for that debt was there was two conditions that were amongst several of them, but two of them were making sure that we had a home, an offtake agreement for the future growth. Remember, Shad, for the last 10 years, we're producing 1.1 to 1.3 million ounces of silver a year. We're talking about bringing that to 2.5 to 3 million to 4 million to 5 million ounces, to restoring it to its glory. Just the same thing we did at Klondex and Karora. So we're not reinventing the wheel here. We're restoring this operation, and we will do that. But we needed to make sure that there was a place for it to get to. We needed to make sure that when we sent it to Trail, that they could accommodate all that additional ounces. You're talking almost 4 times the amount of ounces that we were sending for the last decade. So one of the conditions of the $100 million note was make sure you have security, which is what we did. But alongside it, the debt group also said, look, we'd like to see you guys do a small financing. And this is where Ocean Partners and Teck Cominco alongside us. You see the press release, it was about a 14% premium on the day of, right around 14% premium to our share price. So it was done at 95 cents, which was great for us and our shareholders. It wasn't traditional banking financing where we would have went out and raised some equity at a discount. We did have obviously some bought deals in front of us. In fact, I had three different term sheets, anywhere from 15 to $25 million on a bought deal. All we had to do is sign it. But those came, they were quite steeply dilutive for our shareholders. And you can, if you look on SETI and see how much aligned myself and the rest of our team are, we're very aligned with our shareholders. We're stewards of our capital. We want to make sure that we're not diluting ourselves for the sake of diluting ourselves. And that's why this partnership and equity agreement with Teck and Ocean Partners made so much sense. Instead of going to bankers and getting it at a 10% discount, we got it at a 14% premium, and then secured the home run, which was the $100 million US facility for us. That financing, the equity and the debt together, puts us in a commanding position to do the projects we need to do to unlock Galena and even our Mexican assets and do exploration so that we can really start to see the value come out of these assets. So taking a bit more time and getting that $100 million facility was very critical because it puts us in a position that we don't need to raise any equity, and we can just get to that 5 million ounces over the next 2 years or so here.
Yeah, I think it really was a transformative transaction that puts you in a great seat to grow production, not have to worry about financing. You've got good partnerships you brought in there, gives you some wiggle room to invest in exploration and growth. And like you say, while things are really going to be ramping up at Galena, you still have a great operations down in Mexico. Let's go down to the Cosalá operations. You've got the San Rafael mine. You also have the El Cajon mine, but really the initiative at El Cajon is switching over to this EC 120 mine right next door, and that's going to be a big initiative for this year. So give us a nice holistic update on the Mexican operations.
Yeah, so look, those of you who don't know, Mexico was actually a big contributor to our company for years here. A lot of the corporate bills were being paid out of Mexico. Mexico was the lifeline to the company as there was a lot of effort being put onto Relief Canyon. So Mexico, we're in the process now of driving a drift, almost a new tunnel to almost a new zone. So as you pointed out, El Cajon is EC 120. That's a brand new area that we're going to be going into. We'll be there likely by Q4 of this year. That opens up Mexico for a brand new area for us where the grade is better. And operationally, we've got an amazing team on the ground there. In fact, I've been quoted by a lot of people. A lot of people have heard me say that if the team in Mexico was actually running our asset up in Galena, there's a very good chance I wouldn't have been needed. The team in Mexico are strong operators. They know what they're doing, and we're making money in Mexico. So it's always nice to have that asset, that core asset that's doing well. At the moment, it's not making as much money as it typically can, but it's only because we're driving towards that new zone. And we taxed that asset pretty hard for the last 4 years while the company was trying to find financial solutions before this deal got done. So you can imagine there was a lot of pressure on the group in Mexico to generate cash to pay a lot of the bills.
Well, and I think there's still a lot of upside, not just this EC 120 new area, which is very exciting, but even the ability to extend San Rafael. And there's some other historic mines there. I've been following this area for a long time, probably since 2015, so a decade. And I know there's still probably some rocks to overturn in Mexico to keep growing those operations. But it brings up an interesting point, too, about your metals mix. We've talked about a lot of metals on this call. We've talked about silver, lead, zinc, copper, antimony, gold. But you're going to have a really strong torque to the silver price. And I think it's unique how much percentage of silver you actually have in your production mix, because in Mexico, a lot of that was base metals the last few years, and now you're going into some more silver rich zones. So maybe talk about your metals mix and the torque you have to rising silver prices.
Yeah, so we're about 80% of our metals is coming directly from silver. So that's quite unique. I'm actually, when I think about it, I don't think there's too many groups out there that have 80% of their revenue stream coming from all silver. So when you consider where is silver going, Shad? Well, look, it's just come through 35. Even at these prices, these are very healthy silver prices for us. I'm certainly not complaining, but I don't think it's anywhere close to being done this rally. I think we're just starting to see it. We're starting to see it pierce through 35. It's danced around $37 an ounce. Could it hit $50 an ounce? Well, you do the math. Anybody can run a calculator and say, what happens at $40 silver, at $50 silver? Well, we're highly leveraged to silver prices. And when silver goes up, you can see our stock immediately act. And certainly I'm very bullish on silver and where it's heading. That's going to be even more. I know I keep saying icing on the cake, but it's a tremendous win for us and our shareholders. If we were to take the view of just sit and do nothing and just wait and see what happens with silver prices, it went up to $50 an ounce, our share price would double on that news. And it's not like we're the type of people who will sit around and wait for silver to do something. We're going to be quite busy at making sure we get our mines operating as they should be.
Yeah, I just thought it was worth highlighting because there's a lot of household names in the silver space that only have 20, 30, 40% silver exposure. So to have upwards of 80% exposure to silver really puts you in a unique spot in the silver mining space just amongst all of your peers. You've touched on some of the team in Mexico and you've touched on some of the new team you put in place, but maybe spend a moment and just unpack for people not familiar with your background. We've kind of alluded to the successes at Klondex and at Karora, and we were covering your success at Karora here on the show as it was happening. But share your background, Paul, but maybe one or two other people from the board that you want to highlight.
Sure. Look, I've been pretty privileged here to work with quite a few familiar faces here. And then we'll start at the board level here. Myself, I've been mining 37 years, Shad. I started my career in Timmins, Ontario. I was a bad hockey player, so I went underground at 18 years old. 37 years ago, I was a miner for 13 years, then decided to go get a degree in mining at Haileybury School of Mines, which changed my life and allowed me an opportunity to come to the US where I met my lovely wife. And we have wife and 7 kids. And our biggest investment in our lives is in America's Gold and Silver. And it's, I can tell you, the safest investment of my life. So we didn't gamble anything. We put it in the safest place we know, and that's in America's Gold and Silver. So if you look at my position, you'll see it's a very strong position. Fast forward, you know my career at Klondex, then Karora, and over here. And then the privileges of working with similar faces at the board. I've got Scott Hand, who was the chairman of RNC, who then became Karora. I replaced him as chairman. Very strong mining guy. He ran Inco for years and sold Inco, and I think it was around 2005 for $19 billion. Peter Gowdy, who's also on our board, a very familiar face, who's an executive of Inco as well. So we get the benefit of having a very strong board. We have 2 other directors from the previous team, Brad and Gord, who are very strong alongside us. And then we brought 2 amazing females, Mary and Tara, who were both with us at Karora. And then on an operations team, the executive team, I've got myself again, Mike Doolin, who is the chief operating officer at Klondex, who is the chief operating officer at Karora, who's here again, and then Oliver Turner's with us, John Letty, Robert Buchanan. So it's really about rallying the same team and keeping us all motivated to work together again and do another one of these wins for our shareholders. So you see a lot of the familiar faces, but we have a proven track record of delivering at a couple other companies where Klondex, we were there 7 years, Karora 6 years. We're very excited to be on this journey for the last 5 months here at America's Gold and Silver. We think it's going to be the best one we've ever had altogether ever.
Well, it's nice to see you put the band back together again. You've got a good project, a good team, good fundamentals for the metals prices. Let's also talk about the financial strength of the company, which we've already started to unpack with the transaction you just did. But I think it'd be nice to also highlight some of the key stakeholders and also that you're also included in the SIL ETF. So just break down some of the key stakeholders and partners and the financial health of the company.
Yeah, so when I think back about 5 months ago when I just joined the company, Shad, we had a shareholder base that was approximately 8% institutionally held. And today, when I look around and I see some of the names and in our shareholder register, it won't surprise you that many of them are former Klondex and Karora who have done well with the team. But today, we're sitting a little over 60% of our shareholder base that's institutionally held. And that's quite important. It's good to have that base of institutional shareholders believing in the team and in us. So we're quite excited about that. So look, we've got a great shareholder base. Obviously, Cornerstone, 20% shareholder Eric Sprott It's hard to ever forget Eric and his presence. Eric is a pretty strong person, no matter which room he's in. He's our largest shareholder. He's actually sitting at about 20% at the moment. Right behind Eric, we have Merck, who's a very large shareholder. They were, again, shareholders of both Karora and Klondike. We're very happy to have Mackenzie at the table. We've got Delbrook, we've got Conway, US Global, CI Financials, New Gen Capital, Manulife, Morale Asset, Four, CQS, BMO. These are some great names, all names that we would recognize. These are all great institutions that we have been able to market and that are shareholders here alongside us. So, very pleased to have such a core strength with us. And look, we're far from over here. Where we sit here today, there is a lot of room in this stock to grow from here. So expect some new institutions that we're already marketing and working with, because that list will change and it will grow from here.
Well, I think it's also worth noting that you're featured in the SIL ETF. Any potential to get into the SILJ?
Absolutely. Look, it's just about doing what we do best here, and we will end up in the SILJ. And look, we could even find ourselves on the GDXJ, somewhere we've been for a long time, and the GDX that's in the future. So these are all other index that we absolutely can qualify for and will get there as soon as we continue to do what we're doing here and get that share price up and deliver on the operations. It's always about the operational successes that drive our share price and exploration at the drill bit as well. So we've got a very unique story. We've got everything is paved in front of us now that the financing is set. It's just about unleashing it now.
Well, just as we wrap up, Paul, getting ready to unleash that growth, what are the key catalysts you really want investors looking for the balance of this year, and maybe as we roll into the beginning of next year?
Yeah, I think, Chad, I think it's simple from this point. I think a lot of people thought we had a very stressed and strained balance sheet, which we did. If you look back at the end of Q1, we were showing a little over $8 million in cash. Now, with the recent financing, we are in a commanding position to do what this team does best. And it's about delivering on operational successes. And for us, 2025 is really about some very key projects, getting the shaft fixed, getting the equipment on site, getting the equipment running, testing long hole, implementing long hole, and putting in the batch plant, and then getting the equipment underground with that long hole drill and the new equipment. So for us, there are very, very important projects that must be done this year. Again, this is our forte. This is what we do best. So we're quite excited about it. And then it opens up the door for us to really start increasing tons and ounces next year.
All right. Well, we'll keep following along with all of the initiatives the company has in place here at the KE Report. It sounds like you got a full slate of projects to work on, both in Idaho and in Mexico. So we'll keep tabs on that. And for those of you listening in, if you want to keep tabs on the company, definitely click on the link below in the show notes. It takes you right over to the America's Gold and Silver website, straight to their news section, where you can sign up for updates that hit your email inbox or just follow along with the news as it's released to the market. Paul, thanks so much for coming on the KE Report and reintroducing the story. It was great to learn a little bit more about America's Gold and Silver, and looking forward to our next conversation.
All right, great. Thank you very much, Chad.